Hello, this is Lisa LeRose here on Connect to Love on PRNFM. And, of course, I'm joined by the amazing Michael J. Russ. And, Michael, you start your day so much with the intention that you're going to make it awesome. And I would imagine your day has been awesome today. Is that the case?
It has. That's because I make it that way.
Absolutely.
I preach that all the time. You know, we say, I think about this all the time. When I'm out for my walks, I think people say, have a great day, have a great day. Somebody drives by and goes, have a great day. And to me, yeah, it's a cordiality. We say that to people, and we I'm sure sincerely mean it, that they will have a great day. However, the person, what does it really mean? It means that you're, to me, it's like you're out in a sailboat. You don't have a rudder, right? And you're just basically just getting blown from one place to another and dealing with what you're dealing with. You know, you're having whatever time some outside force dictates that you have. That's, in my view, what having a great day is, where something outside of you is dictating what kind of day you're having. When you are a sovereign being and your motto is to make it a great day, make it an amazing day, make it a fabulous day, then what you're doing then is you're putting your hand on the rudder of your own sailboat, and you are now guiding yourself one place or another. If you get in a storm, you've got your hand on the steering mechanism to get through it, versus being blown left, crashing, blown right, crashing, and then ultimately ending up on the rocks on shore. And so,
I love that.
Yeah, literally, that is what it is. You know, it may be it may be too nuanced for some people. It may be too nitpicky or too trite. However, in my view, having an amazing life is composed of a bunch of building blocks, little things that you do every day that add up to the big picture of, hey, I am happy, I am prosperous, I have abundance like crazy, I am living an amazing adventure. That adventure isn't just one silver bullet thing you do. It's not. It's having a great inner conversation that's supportive of, it's figuring out what you want in life, then backing it with sovereignty to make sure that you don't allow other people to rain on your parade, so to speak, okay, to put out your fire. And it's about having an inner conversation that is in line with it, that supports all the cool stuff that you seek to accomplish, that you intend to do for yourself, that you envision. You sit down and use your imagination. We had a show about imagination within the last 2 months. A great show about using your imagination. All these are little building blocks, and little building blocks are what we use, what you as a human being have at your disposal to just be amazing, to have the kind of day that you really want to have, to have the kind of life you really want to have. And last week we talked about, you know, being a superhero. And yeah, I'll tell you what, I think it was a great show, and I believe when we talked about this show, we've got to give people some opportunity of, I should say, to implement what we were talking about. It's like, what is the superhero now? How do we use these attributes to make our life absolutely amazing? How do we put on the cloak of the superhero and walk the walk? I guess that's
right.
I'd probably put it, right?
And I think, yeah, and I'm so glad, because once you find, your inner hero, I think, how do you use that? And to recognize that being your own hero doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be a superhero, that there's parts of you that, are going to face pain and struggles and have weaknesses. It's really, truly about, in my belief, being your own true, unshakable, loyal friend, that you want the best for yourself always, and that you can create your best life, whatever that looks like for you, and deal with challenges. You kind of, you breathe them in. You're like, okay, this too shall pass. Nothing is I heard something this morning where this young lady, it was just the infinite wisdom where she said, if you look back at all of the years that you've been on this planet, you've already lived through some of the worst challenges, and here you are. You're here, and you embrace the day. Yeah. And there, you don't know what challenges lay ahead, but don't live in fear. Really, truly live your life with intention, consistency, compassion. And I think that that's really important, that when you show up for yourself with real love, you embody whatever values and you stay true to that integrity, that authenticity, whatever the commitments you've made to yourself. And that's a personal journey. It's a very, very personal journey. And I think for each of us, as you filter through that, so I know with you, Michael, that there have, no matter what it's been, you pretty much go with the flow. You allow the flow of your day, whatever the purpose. You get up in the morning, you have an intention, and there may be some obstacles that come across your path, but it's how that you handle them and how you pivot that moment to allow that stuff to sort of release it and not affect you as you walk into your evening. And I truly think that that's part of one of your superpowers, that you're able to do that. And I think that it would be really valuable for our audience to hear a little bit and maybe learn a little bit more about that skill and how you developed it.
Well, I back about 30 years ago, plus maybe 30, 35 years ago is probably likely the time frame. I went from, I had to shift my identity. I had to go from, I love sales. It's a profession that for me has treated me very well in my lifetime. I love people, and I love helping people and being of service to people and making sure people get what they really want and what they really desire. And being honest about when I don't have it, and that they need to seek it elsewhere. And if I can help them find out where that is, it's great. However, I took over a position, and a sales position, and I went from a salary to a 100% full commission, and that meant that the day I started, I had no idea what I was going to make that month or that year. And I had a house to pay for. Of course, my wife at the time was working, and thankfully there was a second income, and I had the ability to, we had to, kind of struggle for a couple of months. However, I had faith in myself. And one of the things that some of the things that I faced in that time frame was wrapping my mind around the fact that you're a happy camper when you go to work and somebody says, yeah, you're going to get X amount of dollars at the end of the month, or every 2 weeks you get a paycheck, regardless of how you feel, whether you're sick, whether you go to work or not, whether or not you feel great or not, whether or not you're in a great mood, you're still going to get that money if you show up, right? So when you get to a situation where now I'm dependent, like an entrepreneur, I was an entrepreneur. I had to find my clients. I had to develop a relationship with them and learn along the way and help them succeed, be successful in their own right. And so that was something completely different for me. And was it scary? Oh, absolutely. It was scary. My stomach would be torn up every morning when I got up to go to work. I was just like, man, I found I was driving myself crazy, and I didn't like feeling that way. So I had to step back and reassess how I was perceiving what I was doing and get my goals in order. I had to examine my what I was saying to myself about what I was doing and what my purpose was and how I felt about it. I'd have a serious, deep inner conversation with myself, and then examine my inner conversation with the things I was saying about myself. I'd set goals and then figure out how to back those goals with the proper language of self-talk. And that took about 6-8 months to a year. for me to kind of get that all aligned. And the first thing I did was I stopped beating myself up. Sometimes what we do, it's when you're in a situation as an entrepreneur where you have a great day and then you have the next day you don't do anything, and then the next day you don't do anything, and then the next day you have a great day. Great day being defined by I helped somebody, I was of service to somebody, so I got them what they wanted so I could get what I needed, right? Because that's the way it works. Mm-hmm. I don't get what I want unless I help you get exactly what you want. And as an entrepreneur, that's the way it works. And you look for people who you can help, who you can be of service to in order to effect that kind of transaction. And so that's where I was. And for me, I had to get to the point where my happiness, my feelings about myself and my life, whether I was happy or anything else or joyful, did not depend upon whether I made any money that day. It depended on a different set of circumstances. Like I lowered the bar. I really lowered the bar. It wasn't about the money. It was about, did I make a connection today? Did I connect with somebody that in the future I might be able to help? That was it. Did I meet a prospective client today? Because what happens is, if you get into this, it's like this endorphin dopamine hit thing where you make some money, you love yourself, you don't make some money, you hate yourself. And a lot of people go through this anyway without being an entrepreneur or in business, but they set some bar that they need to get over every day, and if they do, they're happy. If they don't, they're sad. And it's not a great way to live, because the rest of your life away from work suffers, because the frequency that you're resonating away from work isn't that great, and you're impacting the lives of, if you've got a significant other, friends, family, whatever, other connections. And that's one of the things that I had to come to grips with first. And 38 years later, by the way, I should tell you that I had to go through all this, and I had to plan a vacation for myself, because when I was away on vacation, no money was being made. So if I went away for a week or 10 days, I had to work out how to deal with making sure that I kept everybody happy and that the prospective clients I had got serviced, and I had to work out a whole routine. If I was, by the way, rarely if ever sick. Rarely in my life, I've not gotten sick very often with flu or otherwise, and that's because, in my view, it was tied to the frequencies I was resonating. And if I'm happy, joyful, my goal is to be happy, joyful, kind, empathetic, compassionate, and loving all the time. And believe it or not, 38 years later, the clients I've had over the last 38 years have all been that same way, because you do attract the frequency that you're resonating. And if you're and I was doing about this, by the way, I was doing all of this over the phone. I was doing it all over the phone. I wasn't knocking on doors and seeing people. I was calling people out of the blue. So the first thing people say when I tell them that is, I could never do that. Well, if someone offered you an opportunity with limitless income potential, and it was very much 100% of whether you succeeded or failed was dependent upon you and your attitude and how you felt about yourself, unfortunately, a lot of people would find that a huge challenge. However, it's one of the biggest walls you climb in life, and one of the most gratifying when you do climb it and jump over the other side. And I've gone away for a week, 2 months. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something. I've been married twice. My second wife is German, and I spent 2 weeks of every month in Germany for 2 years. I made no money in those 2 weeks, and I came back and I made just as much money, helped just as many people in 2 weeks as I did in 4 weeks. But I went and enjoyed myself for 2 years. I did it for 2 years. Yeah, so I mean, it's one of these things where you use your imagination, you set some goals, you put the energy, put it out there. When they talk about manifesting and your own reality, creating your own reality, we actually do, by virtue of how we interpret the experiences that we have and how we feel about ourselves in relationship to our outer world. All of that comes to the path. The magic that occurs, or that has occurred, the miracles that have occurred for me in the past 38 years are too many to count. They're infinite. It's just amazing that with a positive attitude, and today, if things aren't working out the way I think they should work out, I don't force them. I just get up and leave. Or I'll go meditate, I'll go play golf, or I'll just take a drive, take a top down on my car and take a drive, or I'll clean up the yard. I'll go do something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's really what I love to do. Something that brings me a sense of accomplishment, away from what that doesn't depend upon money, where it's not determined by money, where money is not
right.
the object of whether or not it was the judge of success or failure. We get hooked into that, and it's a this is, by the way, before digital, and now we've got devices and things that can give us the same feeling of success or failure without having it targeted towards our own employment. If we put a post out and nobody responds, you get the same feeling then as if you went to work in your own business and didn't get a client that day, or didn't service anyone that day to bring in a wage, a living, to make a living. But you've got something in your hand that can do that can create that same mental problem, of addiction, so to speak, to a type of success, a vision of success that is unrealistic. If you want to be happy, this is why I started writing books about self-talk and dealing with adversity, and started talking so much about happiness. And I know on my own podcast, when happiness is in the title, it gets twice as many listens by people, because happiness for many people is elusive. It's just elusive because they're looking outside of themselves for something that's going to make them happy, instead of generating the happiness from within, based on your own thoughts, words, feelings, inner conversations, inner vision, that kind of thing. And it is a problem in our society today. And I know I'm not the only one, because I know you live a very unique lifestyle, and you are your own boss. You are you're a self-actualized human being, and you love yourself, you care about yourself, and you care about animals, and you care about something greater than yourself, which is absolutely awesome. And I know that you've had your own little, tussles at some particular point in your life. And I mean, I've bared my soul. Time for you to bear yours.
Well, Michael, I want to just say that in what you're sharing, I see you so much in giving. You give, and then it's just sort of the law of karmic return, that you are giving out, and it comes back to you. What you give out comes back 100-fold. And I think that in discovering your inner hero, that's exactly what it is, whether you call them your God-given gifts or your talents, whatever it is, that as you discover them and you nurture them and you honor them, it will be given to other people. And I really liked what you said relating to social media, because I think that sometimes people see others and they compare themselves and they think, well, there's only so much of this to go around, and there's not enough for me, or I don't have this, or I'm not worthy. And in my world, it's never been that way. The universe is always endlessly abundant. And I think that that's the power and that's the magic in everything that I do. I don't consciously do it. I think it's just sort of innate in who I am. It's kind of like recognizing that the sun is there, even if it's hidden behind the clouds. It's always there. It gets up. It comes in the morning, and it disappears at night. But guess what? It'll return again in the morning. And that's sort of the way the ebb and flow of my life is. And this past weekend, I did another event, And it was so amazing because I thought the same thing. I thought my week was busy. What am I doing? Why am I here? And I ran into 3 people that I hadn't seen in a very long time, actually 4 people. And one of them, it was so interesting because I shared with a lot of the people that I spoke with on Saturday a lot about what the topic of our show was. And it was so interesting because you could see this light in their eyes. It just sort of lit up because they started thinking about, wow, that's an amazing, I never thought about that, or how you're kind of questioning. And the one gentleman that I ran into, I won't mention his name, and I hope that he's listening because I had seen him. He used to work for the post office. He retired, and every time I went into the post office, he always had such a beautiful smile and such a warm feeling about him. I knew his first name. I didn't really know very much about him, and but and then one day he just disappeared. I didn't know he retired. He didn't have a chance to say goodbye, whatever it was.
Wow. Yeah.
And he happened to come to this event, and he looked at me and said, "Lisa," and I said, "I apologize, I don't remember your name." And he said, "Ritz," and I said, "How are you?" And it was so interesting because here he has a lot of the same interests that I do as far as books and all sorts of interesting, amazing things. And I said, I didn't even know this about you. And I thought to myself, look at this. It couldn't have been a better exemplifier of these varied treasures that are within these people that we may only see. You can sort of single-serving friends, right? You'd see them in a restaurant, you see them here, and you don't delve into who they are and the gifts they have and the knowledge. And he said, and he started sharing. He said, "Oh, well, you need to check out this, and you need to look at that." And it was such a great conversation. And he said, I don't live that far away from here. He said, and I was driving by, I thought, I'll come in and get a coffee. He said, and then something drew me in here. And I'm so glad that it did, because it was just it was like a new gateway. And that, for me, is exactly how things sort of manifest. And, one person said to me the other day, well, one of your gifts is that you're a manifester and you're an attractor. And I truly believe that when you hold that beauty or that love in your heart, that's exactly what it is. I have so many babies that smile at me, and I wave to them, and I put a big smile on, and I feel their heart. I mean, I don't know how to put it any other way. But I think that that's what it, being here on this planet, we get, some of us, and it was interesting for me because a lot of the people that I was around on Saturday said, I stopped watching the news. I don't watch the news. I don't listen to it. I don't have any clue, sort of what Pam was saying. And I think that probably is how they stay connected a little bit more to, they're not having anybody tell them how they should live their life. They're discovering things on their own.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 110%. And you're right. You are a manifestor, by the way.
Thank you.
And the beautiful thing is that we all have that ability. We all have the ability to manifest what we want in our lives. It's a function of how we position ourselves, position our thinking, and how we go about the day. I go about the day thinking, what's the next incredible thing that's going to happen to me, whether it happens or not. That is rather true. I mean, it could be anything, and it doesn't really matter. What's incredible? Incredible could be some good news from a friend of mine. What is it? You don't necessarily define it narrowly. It's just what could happen? What could be that what could go on? And it's kind of like the Rumi quote. I did a talk on Sunday, and I started the talk out with Rumi's quote of, "There's something I do not know, the knowing of which could change everything," which is a profound way to live. And I told the group I was talking to that it's an incredible way to live. If you woke up in the morning with the thought of, hey, what cool thing is going to happen to me today? What kind of information am I going to come across today that's going to shift or pivot me in a whole new direction in my life? What might it be? And then you spend the day. For me, I approach the day from a perspective of my eyes are wide open, my perceptions are all positive. I wonder why I'm standing next to people when I go to places. Perhaps they have something to share with me, or I have something to impart to them that could help them move forward in their lives. And you start engaging with your outer world in a completely different way. And that is, if we're going to circle back around to being your own superhero, which I'd love to do here right about now, and that is that when you look at some of the things that we're talking about, when we're talking about, hang on just a second, I'm sorry. When you're looking at some of the attributes of a hero, bravery and conviction and courage, determination, being helpful and honest, inspirational, moral, having integrity, being protective, and self-sacrificing, selflessness, strength. I mean, if you think about these things, you can turn each one of these around into a mindset of action. You know, and that's really what we're talking about. They're just not attributes; they are actual things, ways of thinking that you can adopt to operate through your day. And you know, it's kind of like Superman has got a uniform underneath. He's got and a cape underneath his outfit, his suit and tie. And what he's always on the lookout for is someone to be of service to, somebody to help. And as opposed to, I've got a superhero costume underneath, and you know, I'm all caught up in my own thing. I'm caught up in someone else's drama and someone else's misery, and to the point where, or my own misery, in terms of experientially, so that I'm unaware of somebody else who needs some help. You know, I mean, think about the outside circumstances that occur. I don't think Superman would be in a traffic jam if he was going to drive and not fly with other people, and he's complaining about traffic. You know, I don't think that's the case. I think once you have that mindset of that awareness that you have the ability to embrace your own the superhero within you, that you're thinking about the little stuff that's inconsequential. You're looking at a big picture of how you can be of service to yourself and to others, how you can increase the level of love you have for yourself and for humanity, and thinking about when you're down to the most minute thing. If you're in a city that recycles and you have something that's recyclable, does a superhero just throw it in a normal trash bin and let it go to the dump? Or do they hold on to it and wait till they can put it in a recycle bin? You know, something simple like that. I mean, these little things add up. These are the little decisions you make throughout the day that determine whether or not you are a thinking, acting, and feeling like a superhero. Have that inner conversation of a superhero. I love you. I can do anything. That's a superhero mentality. That's a superhero inner conversation that builds energy, positive energy for whatever it is you envision for yourself. That is what 30 years ago I got into in a fascinating way. I was in an over the top way. I mean, I jumped off the cliff and I said, this is fascinating. I have the ability to control how I feel in any given moment. Wow, what a power. What a superpower. And we all have that superpower. I mean, it's like people say, oh, no, I feel like terrible. I'll let this. I said, why do you feel terrible? Because of that thing that occurred. Really? You realize that you have the ability to not respond that way to that thing because you responded to it in a negative way. And as I said probably on this podcast in the past, you know, there was a really bad train wreck in Athens. A few weeks ago, there were 3 bad earthquakes in Turkey. And I'm going to Turkey in September for 2 weeks. And people say, oh, yeah, how can you feel good when there's all this stuff going on in the world, all this bad stuff going on in the world? And I say, well, number one, I have no control over that bad stuff. I have no control over what happens to people. I understand that. However, what I do have control over is what I do myself. And I can close my eyes and I can send that area or those souls love and light. I can do that. I can send them something from my heart. I can envision a beam of white light leaving my heart and just blanketing the region, right? I can do that. And I can feel good about that I've done something that etherically can help those souls who've passed on. 40,000, 50,000 of them in Turkey. I think the death toll is going to be as high as 10,000. I think it's going to be probably several hundred people on the train. And, stuff happens. It's way out of your control. And a superhero is somebody who recognizes that you have no control over everything outside of you. That's it. You can just control how you think of yourself, what you think you're capable of, how you feel, the inner conversation going on in your head. When you bring it back there, you understand taking it to the next level is you can control that, but you can also control what you resonate. And that impacts other people in a positive way, and the earth, the planet, the universe, whatever, everything in a positive way. And that's where you have a superhuman power. And I'm passionate about using that power for good to impact other people's lives. Like the guy who said, I smile after I talk to people, after everything I say, down in where was that, San Juan, Puerto Rico. Blew my mind that he said that he had the awareness to actually recognize and tell me that. I'm like, nobody's ever told me that in my entire life. I talked to a lot of people, and somebody I didn't know, had never met, and I understood at that particular moment that was why I was there. That's why I was there. It wasn't to have that amazing lunch. It wasn't to have that nice glass of wine. It wasn't to walk out on the beach. It was to meet this person, this soul, and have them share something with me that would shift my life in a whole new direction. I think differently now about myself when I'm out because of what he said.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
what a gift. What a gift.
Yeah, it's those kinds of experiences. Some people might slough it off and go, oh, no, I don't deserve that, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you do. You deserve every great comment anybody ever gives you. You deserve it.
Right. And, it's so interesting because when I work with people in whether it be a physical problem or an emotional challenge or something, a lot of times I'll sit there and I'll ask them first an open-ended question, if there was something I could do for you, what would that be? And then secondly, and I think you can ask yourself, if if there was something I could do for myself, what would that be to change what I'm currently experiencing? And be honest with yourself. And then, a lot of times I'll ask somebody, tell me your story. And they'll say, what story? And I say, I don't know, whatever you feel like talking about. Tell me a story.
Yeah, good.
And
awesome,
it's what comes up, and you find that people sometimes they get caught in a loop, and they get caught, and then I ask another open-ended question. Well, if that wasn't like that, then what would happen? Then what? And I think that's exactly what happens. We create habitual patterns in our lives. We, need to really curate and choose our thoughts that support our growth in order to be our own best inner hero. I think that when we observe ourselves from the outside and look at the opposite of positive mindset, which I prefer over the other word, it makes it easier for us to release the patterns that cause us harm and bring us down and make us doubt ourselves and doubt our inner strength or our inner powers. And I think that, if you can, when you're feeling overwhelmed, and I really love the exercise, and you just put your hands on your heart and take 3 deep breaths in and think about something you love. That anxiety, those negative thoughts, that overwhelm cannot exist in that same space as love. And
That's
so
true.
whatever it is that you need to do to shift that, and then change those words, replace the opposite of positive words with positive ones instead. You can be your best. You absolutely can achieve happiness and be in control of your own life by filling your life with positive words, because they do have energy. And I really do. I love open-ended questions like that. And I think as if we, we we limit ourselves, what would that look like? What would that look like if that weren't the case? And it makes you. Yeah, I do. I really
awesome
think
point.
It makes a difference.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to live. I think it's an amazing way to go through life, and it has rewards that you can't measure. And because everybody's into measuring everything nowadays, for its depth, and it's just what you can't measure that. You can't quantify it. It's just something that the energy that you put out, and it's all about the way you feel as an individual, you feel as a person, and that's one of the things that I talk about most often with people. And I love the open-ended question aspect of things. I like asking people how they feel about things, and that gets them actually talking about a lot of different things. I was telling this group on Sunday that I love to engage people when I'm sitting in a restaurant and I'm sitting next to somebody. I look for ends. I look for opportunities to acknowledge their existence or something about them or something about what they're doing. And I can tell, I can sense when it's not a good time, and so I don't. However, if I sense that there's an opportunity that would be a good thing to say, you know what, I really love that top you're wearing. If it's a young lady or a couple, I'd say something like if they exhibited behavior that is very loving and very caring, I would simply acknowledge that fact. I said, you look like a really, really great couple. You've got such love, and that that acknowledgement, whether it leads to something else or not, most of the time it does. We're here, we're celebrating our so and so. Really, really, how do you feel about life now? You ask that, and you can get amazing responses from people.
I agree.
And believe it or not, it may be an opportunity to impart something positive. Because
there was this. I was going to say there was this young girl. When you said that, it just reminded me. She was probably in high school, just very natural, like beautiful skin, beautiful pale white skin, and she had her hair, and she just had a presence about her. And I looked at her. I said, "You're just such a beautiful girl." And she looked at me. She's like, "Me?" And I said, "Yeah, look at how natural. You've got this natural beauty about you." And she's like, "No, nobody ever said that about me." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I said, "Look at your eyes." I said, "Really?" I said, I couldn't believe it, because there was just, she would have been one of those Gibson girls that came out. I mean, just like flawless skin and just real brightness about her. And I could
Beautiful.
it was just really amazing. And I think that when we have beliefs, and I'd love to hear because you're really good about this, that beliefs do not represent what's true and factual. It's based on our perception of reality. And I think that that's really important, that whatever we believe. And Michael, you're so eloquent about speaking about perceptions and how we shift our perception and the belief system within us. I'd love to hear your wisdom, and if you wouldn't mind sharing it with the audience. I absolutely love it.
I don't mind. A very good friend of mine told me once. She said, "Here's the first thing: is when you're talking to people, don't ever tell them. Don't ever use the words I believe, and don't use the words I think." And she says, she edited my first book, basically. She was an English PhD, and she edited my first book. And she says, "Michael, I'm going to tell you this. Never say I believe, never say I think, because nobody cares about what you believe and nobody cares about what you think. These are we go around saying those things like, I believe blah, 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 or I believe, because you think about it for a second, a belief and truths and things of that nature about things outside of us, they are only as valid as our experience up to that particular point. Mm-hmm. In the next 10 minutes, we could experience something completely different that would blow that belief or that thought or that truth right out of the water. We learned something new. Again, there's something I do not know, the knowing of which could change everything, which means could change my beliefs, could change my thoughts, could change the perception I have about myself. Perceptions are a really powerful thing, and I've given this so much thought in the last 10 years. Perceptions, in my view, by the way, that is what I say instead. Instead of saying I think, I say in my view. To me, to me, or in my view, my experience has led me to conclude, that this. I don't want to necessarily be pressing my beliefs on someone else or my thoughts, my thinking. Everybody comes from a different place, and that's why she says that's why it's important not to say that. The truth is, it's a thing in the English language that we just banter around. The truth is, the truth to you is different than the truth to somebody else because your experiential wisdom is different, right? Experiential wisdom, you're coming from a different place. So, perception is absolutely your reality. Absolutely. I didn't understand that perception is reality thing in the movies, and television. People say it. It's a great line. It sounds cool. However, it is absolutely accurate. Absolutely accurate, because our own perceptions, whatever we believe to be true about ourselves, is what our lives will mirror. And if we, in terms of that's the energy we're putting out, so that's the energy we're going to get back. What's the shame is that the young lady the young girl you spoke to, who said nobody ever said that about me before, would actually say that. Mm-hmm. I want people to get to the point where they don't need other people's approval to be beautiful, to think they're beautiful, to believe that they can do anything, to love themselves. You don't need other people's acknowledgement. You got to get to that particular point in your life where that is the norm. And that's part of being a superhero. A sovereign being has flexible beliefs because there may be some new iteration of to the information they presently have. Now, there are certain universal, I don't really want to call them beliefs. You can call them truths, or if you'd like, it's kind of a quagmire. However, a sovereign being is one who has complete and total control over their mind, body, and spirit. That's irrefutable. Okay? Sovereign is a ruler, an overseer. And your own sovereignty, your personal sovereignty, is important because if you use it to guide you in this life, you're going to have a vastly different experience than somebody who isn't coming from sovereignty, who is allowing every outside influence to impact their mind, their state of being, their body. If people just tell them things and they just do it, no filter, in terms of what they allow into themselves, what they allow to perhaps corrupt their spirit, impact their spirit in a negative way. All of that is tied to what you currently believe to be true, and the beliefs you have about yourself are the ones that really play out the most in your outer world. It's not what you believe about, what Jack did or how Nancy did that, whether the truth about something outside of you. It's really the truth, the beliefs you have about yourself, the truths you hold about you. That, because they have that mirroring effect. And if our listeners here at PRN-FM can in some way wrap their minds around this and start working towards this, it's not your outer world that you need to fix if you're not enjoying life. It's your inner world. It's you that you have to fix. And once you fix you give yourself a compass, then you can chart your way anywhere. That's basically it. And it might sound overly simplistic. However, as someone said the other day, there's so much stuff outside of it, so much noise, so much distraction, so much. You've got corporations and industries, whole industries, one particular purpose, and that is to basically control you, to dictate what you think about yourself and what you think about your life. Because if they can get you to that point, to question that, then because that's when you're doing that, you're operating from a lower frequency, then they can impart suggestions to you that you're going to more readily accept. That's really the case. When you are strong, when you are your own superhero, because you're a sovereign being, thinking and acting from the attributes of a hero, you're going to be less susceptible to suggestion from other people and outside influences. That's really the key. I make sure that I use reason with everything I do. It's kind of like ask questions, question everything, because I want to kind of get the lay of the land. I want to kind of see what's going on. If I just simply accept that because someone told it to me, that's not good enough. I'd really like to kind of look around and get different points of view, different information, and kind of correlate it and see what correlates together, what doesn't, and come up with my own theories, although those theories are flexible because new information may come my way. That's pretty much it. However, in this society that we live in now, there was a gentleman who wrote. I was listening to an NPR who wrote a great book, and I will give you the title of this book because it's really pretty amazing. The book is called Stolen Focus. Stolen Focus. Yeah, it's really an interesting book. He went all around the world to talk to the most brilliant people about focus and what scientific evidence that from actual studies and other things that have been done to understand why we have a problem focusing, why we have a problem with attention span, why people, why there's anxiety. Yeah, it's really rather true. It's really cool and it's quite remarkable. I'll tell you one thing. It's really, really the coolest thing. After this whole program, he says one thing. He says, you have to have a way of mitigating what's going on outside of what you allow into to impact you. He actually went to the point. It went so far as to say that we need to, in some way, get institutions to change and other things, or get social media to change, because social media programs are written to be addictive. They're written to gain attention, greater and greater attention and focus from you. So that is, I understand that. You see, to me, the jig is up. Social media doesn't have any control over me because I understand it. Yeah, my life is too precious to be wasting sitting on my phone for 2 hours. I'd rather be doing something else where I'm engaging with people, or I'm learning something that I could actually do, or going and, again, doing something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a level of enthusiasm, and where I have a level of satisfaction when I'm done with it that makes me feel really good about life because I went and did something. If I had to go learn how to do it, whatever, I learned how, I came back, and I did it. And that is where we need to get back to, instead of just depending upon social media is just one of the outside influences that impacts young lives and older lives. Young lives, mainly, at this particular point, are being driven by it. And he's not the only one to say that, to talk with people in Silicon Valley who've said, this isn't about you connecting with your friends. It's about you spending time on their devices so they can sell more ads and make more money. It has nothing to do with that. It's sold as a, the great human human experience. The human, you're going to get the most human connection. Connect with your friends, stay in touch with your friends. Heck no. The algorithms aren't written. If you've got 1,000 friends, any post you put on is not going to reach all 1,000. It'll only reach a small percentage because they want you to promote to the rest. Pay money so that you can reach the rest of your friends. So these are, I realize it kind of got off track a little bit, but this book, Stolen Focus, was really, really interesting and eye-opening, yet got to the same conclusion that I got to before I even learned the book was around. And that is that it's our outer world is doing everything it can to distract us, to take our attention and focus, and to determine whether or not we love ourselves or not. Because if we don't love ourselves, we'll be more inclined to buy what they have so that we can feel that love for a moment or two. And the true depth of love is what you have for yourself. And once you have that,
Michael, I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, when in exactly what you're saying, if you lose your focus, you lose that connection to your inner hero. And so for anybody who wants to seek that inner hero and experience the aliveness that comes with it in the midst of this technological culture that we live in, it does take some time to sort of retreat inward, away from that. And when I think you do, and this is sort of the purpose of what do you do when you discover that, it's about coming alive in a joyful and satisfying way. It's about becoming part of a real community and gathering in person and practicing whatever that soul exploration it is. I think that it's about playing and tapping into all of the inspiration we get from the universal presence that's around us that makes us shine as unique individuals. And I think that's really what the world needs right now. And that's why that book is so important, and why connecting to that inner hero is so important. As you always mention, it's an alchemical process. It's designed to bring forth, strengthen, and unite all of that aspects of what that hero is inside. And
exactly. I love that, and that's so true. That is so true. Our inner hero is just waiting for us to, I think you just said the other day, put on the cape and get busy.
Yes, absolutely.
That was a great line, by the way. I love it. Put on the cape when you wake up in the morning, and take it off and let it get the wrinkles out at night. When you go to bed, put on the cape every day and be your own superhero. Nothing's stopping you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think here we are at the at the end of our show again. Before we know it.
Yeah, we are. Got to come at some point.
Yeah, I know. It does. And I thank you for all of the wisdom and the insights that you share. The teachings are so important on how to live fully and completely and embrace every aspect. And I love the idea of your view and your vision. It really speaks to me. And I'll let you close out the show, Michael.
Oh, there you go. Let's look at it this way. Perceptually, let's just say it's easy. Let's not build up. Let's not use words like it's hard to be a superhero, it's difficult, it's almost impossible because of this or that. Let's keep our inner conversation purposeful, positive, and directed at being the superhero that we're meant to be. So that is, I am a superhero, and I can do anything.
And so it is. Thank you.
Thank you.